If you've ever driven around the Charlotte metro area, you've seen them, right? These massive storage tanks just kind of dotting the landscape. They are absolute silent giants, and they're totally critical to our economy. But what does it really take to make sure they're safe, secure, and actually up to code? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to break down. These tanks, they're basically part of our unseen infrastructure. They're right here, in our backyard. And while they're a huge part of our economy, they also carry a pretty significant and often hidden industrial risk. So you think about all the complex machinery, all the logistics buzzing around in these industrial hubs. What's the one risk that's kind of hiding in plain sight? Yeah, it's the tanks themselves. You see them all the time lining the I-85 and I-77 corridors, holding everything from petroleum to all sorts of industrial chemicals. They are absolutely essential for business, but a single weld failure, well, that can turn a vital asset into a massive liability, like overnight. Okay, so to prevent that kind of catastrophic failure, a whole system of rules exists. And look, this isn't just a bunch of red tape. It's a playbook, really, designed to stop a disaster before it can even get started. So at the very core of this playbook are two key standards from the American Petroleum Institute, or API. And you gotta notice the clear difference here. API 650, that's the rulebook for building a brand new tank, right from the ground up. But the second that tank is in service, API 653 takes over. That standard governs all the inspections, the repairs, any modifications for the rest of its entire life. And listen, the API standards, they're really just the beginning. There are multiple layers of oversight here. We're talking everything from the state's fire code and federal EPA rules, all the way down to local permits from Mecklenburg County. Each one of these layers adds another level of safety, creating this kind of complex web of compliance. You might be surprised how quickly the federal rules kick in. The magic number is 1320. If your facility has more than 1320 gallons of above-ground oil storage, boom, you're subject to the EPA's spill prevention requirements. That's actually not a huge amount, which means a whole lot of local facilities fall under that federal oversight. Now, all this regulation, it starts to make a lot of sense when you realize not all tanks are created equal. I mean, the type of tank a business needs depends completely on what it does. So let's take a quick tour of the different kinds you'll find floating around Charlotte. The applications for these tanks are just incredibly diverse. We're talking about everything from the fuel that powers our cars and planes, to the water that we drink, and all the chemicals that are really driving our local manufacturing. Right? And each of these categories, they require a super specialized approach. Petroleum tanks, they have to handle volatile fuels. Industrial tanks need to hold very specific raw materials safely. Water tanks, I mean, they're vital for our public systems. And then you have ASME vessels. They're in a class of their own, built specifically to handle really high pressure. So how in the world do you manage all that risk and ensure compliance for all these different kinds of tanks? Well, that's where the inspector's playbook comes in. This is all about taking a proactive, systematic approach. Think of it like a regular health checkup for your tank. The whole inspection process really follows the entire life cycle of the tank. It all starts by verifying every single weld during construction, because let's face it, that's the foundation of its strength. Then you've got periodic, in-service checks that are done to catch problems early. If a repair is needed, that new weld is verified to be just as strong as the original. And finally, advanced testing can give you a much, much deeper look into the health of the steel itself. So that last step mentioned a term you might not know, NDE, or non-destructive examination. Now, I know it sounds super complex, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's just a way to look inside a weld for any hidden flaws, but without having to cut it open or damage it. The best way to think of it is like an X-ray or an ultrasound, but for steel. So what's the real payoff here? What's the bottom line? Following this inspection playbook goes way beyond just checking a few boxes. It's really about protecting your business, your community, and a very, very significant financial investment. It all really comes down to this. A professional, certified inspection process, it accomplishes three absolutely critical things. It protects the tank as a financial asset, it keeps you compliant with that whole complex web of regulations we talked about, and maybe most importantly, it prevents a catastrophic and unbelievably costly failure. So we'll just leave you with this one final thought. When you look at the tanks that your business or your community relies on, what do you see? Is there integrity or well-documented certainty, something confirmed by professional inspection? Or is it a gamble you're just hoping pays off? The answer to that question has some major consequences.